Welcome to the Radiant Astrology Podcast, where we illuminate the wisdom of the cosmos for spiritual insight and soul-level healing. I'm your host, Christina Caudill. Thank you for joining me. Hello, this is Christina Caudill with the Radiant Astrology Podcast. And in today's episode, I'll be talking about the astrology for the month of May. And I'll be bringing in one of my favorite astrologers, Tara Aal from taraal.com. And we'll be talking about the ingress of Uranus into Taurus. But we'll also be spending quite a bit of time with Chiron's entry into Aries, which happened April 17th, which actually is very significant in sort of setting the stage for the environment that we're in before the major events happen in mid-May. So stay tuned for that. And before we get into the May astrology, I do have a couple of announcements. I'm super excited to be doing a course. It's actually an intensive. It's a week-long intensive on Uranus and Taurus. And this is for Kay Pacha's group, the New Paradigm Astrology. So if you go to newparadigmastrology.com and visit the Uranus and Taurus intensive page, you'll see that starting May 12th, we'll be releasing a series of 7 lessons on Uranus and Taurus. So it'll be Kai Pacha, myself, the rest of the New Paradigm Dream Team astrologers, Julia, Maurice Fernandez, Sul, Timothy, and Ari Moshe. And we'll all be taking on a different aspect of this very intense and very significant transit of Uranus ingressing Taurus. And so Uranus and Taurus will be about an 8-year transit. And, Uranus is one of the outer planets, and its purpose is to disturb and transform, right? And right now, as we speak, I'm recording this on May 5th, Cinco de Mayo. And Uranus is still at the very tail end of Aries, the 29th degree, the anaretic degree. And so we've been seeing some, very urgent Uranian themes because Uranus wants to wrap up all of this fiery Aries energy before it enters the realm of Taurus, which is very much an earth sign and symbolic of the earth itself. So, getting back to the Uranus and Taurus intensive class, this course is for members of the New Paradigm Astrology community. So when you join, you get 6 months worth of our community at the New Paradigm Astrology. We have a great forum. We have a private Facebook group where all of the astrologers answer your questions. We do a little bit of, chart delineation, and it's a really great way of being immersed into a community of those who are at all levels of astrology. And we really focus on the astrology because, especially in times like these, when there's so much for us to disagree on, and there's so many things that really push our buttons, and even to in the realm of the subconscious, right? There's so much of this. These subconscious themes that are emerging around the patriarchy and the capitalism and all these things. And so when we look at life and society through the realm of astrology, it can really help us to look with discernment, to take a step back, to see the greater themes, the larger themes that we're all actually involved in. And so it can actually help us to maybe open our minds a little bit, at least understand that, there's a time for everything. So I hope you'll consider joining us in the New Paradigm Astrology. Again, you go to newparadigmastrology.com and click on Join Us, and you can join whether you join for 6 months or a year. That will get you into the Uranus and Taurus intensive class. Now, for myself, as you know, radiantastrology.com is my website, and I'll be offering Uranus and Taurus readings up until May 15th. These are going to be just a one-way audio reading, a 30-minute audio reading. I'll look at your chart. I'll look at what Uranus signifies in your chart, what this 8-year transit could mean, some of the opportunities available. And, of course, any significant transit like this will affect many areas of our chart, because we look at not only where Uranus is transiting, but also, your natal Uranus signature and things like that. So it's basically an overall reading with Uranus ingressing into Taurus as an emphasis. And so those readings are $80, and I'll need you to give me like 5 to 7 days at maximum to get your reading to you. Whenever I do these audio readings, which I rarely do because I actually really prefer seeing a client face to face, but I know a lot of people really like these audio readings. They love the price break that they get on it. They love to sort of get a taste of what astrology may mean for them. And so I usually am really inundated with a lot of orders. So realistically, I like to have up to about a week to get you your reading back. I'll do my best to get it in soon. The sooner you order the reading, the more likely you'll get it, fairly quickly. I am leaving town. I'm going to the UAC conference, the United Astrology Conference, on May 24th for 5 days in Chicago. I won't be speaking at this one, unfortunately, but luckily I'll be able to just enjoy it as just someone attending. So make sure you order your Uranus and Taurus reading by May 15th. After that, they will not be available as an audio reading. So you can visit radiantastrology.com and get the details on that. Or you can always visit me on my Facebook page, Radiant Astrology. Okay, great. Well, that's it for announcements. And I hope you enjoy this chat I have with the astrologer Tara Aal, where we go deep with the Chiron and Aries archetype, as well as look at some of the astrological symbolism and the shifts and changes that we're opening up to for the month of May. I hope you enjoy it. Hello, this is Christina Caudill with Radiant Astrology, and today I'm really excited to have with me my guest to talk about the cosmic insights for May. I have my guest, the astrologer Tara Aal from taraaal.com. Hi, Tara. Thanks for joining me.
Hi, Christina. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, I'm excited to have you. And many of my listeners might recognize you from the Equinox event that we did together that I have on my YouTube channel for Radiant Astrology. That was a really beautiful event. And I got so much great feedback, Tara, from your talk on Chiron and Aries.
Oh, thank you.
It was really in depth, and it really helped to put in perspective how significant this shift is. Mm. And so what I'd like to talk about today is we can touch a little bit on that Chiron and Aries ingress, which happened in April 17th, and maybe what we have seen since then. But I definitely want to look at what is coming up for May. Now, I sometimes write a column for May that just ends up just listing, this aspect and this ingress and this thing like that. And it's kind of like dry and boring. So I thought we'd shake it up and we can just talk about, the feeling that May has and some of the major players and major aspects, because there's a couple of them that are pretty major because this is a major month. So we'll be talking about that. So are you up for it, Tara?
Yeah, sounds fantastic. Let's go.
Okay, great. I did want to also just note, and I'll have this in the show notes, that Tara also writes for ConsciousCommunityMagazine.com, and she has a Cosmic Daily Weather for May 2018, which is really awesome. So you can look at, you have every single day, don't you?
Yeah.
So you can wake up with the weather with Tara Aal. And so we'll go through some of like the major aspects. But what I thought would be great to talk about today to start off with is that when we spoke last time for the equinox, the Aries ingress, gosh, that was way back in May.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem that long ago, but we were talking about what we thought we could expect for the ingress of Chiron. Chiron is the planetoid that we tend to recognize as the wounded healer or the maverick. And it's just shifted from 8 years in Pisces into Aries. And that happened on April 17th. And I think most of us that consider ourselves healers or on some kind of path of healing or spiritual seekers, Chiron really seems to speak to our path and, our creating ourselves and who we're becoming. So what have you noticed since then, Tara, when we've had this shift of Chiron from Pisces into Aries?
Well, I think one thing that has been at least on my mind or my heart, and I do have Chiron and Aries in my natal chart, and it's in the first house. So, for me, I guess it's like we're kind of moved into my time is how I look at it. But the people that come to me, whether it's clients or people I interact with daily and during different writing jobs, there's this feeling of people wanting. I had one client just last night. She says, I'm re-upping who I am in life. And I think there is a big push towards that. One of my writing staff members has just gone to part-time because she needs more time to do what she wants to do, what she needs to do. And I think one of the really empowering things, we talk about Chiron being the wound or the wounding, but it's also the medicine, and some of the most powerful medicine about Chiron and Aries is the asserting who I am, being who I am. People talk about with the sign Aries being, I name myself. Like there's a real element to that of stepping into the world as who I am. So I'm seeing kind of a rush of people, and especially those of us who have Chiron and Aries, I think it is in some ways re-triggered. Most of us, when we're in our kind of midlife space right now. So it's interesting to be 45 and to be saying, hey, I want to, re-up myself. In some ways, it's a reversion back to how we felt maybe when we were, just teenagers. So that's the feeling I'm getting in part.
Mm-hmm. I also have Chiron and Aries as well. So, we'll both eventually be having our Chiron return in Aries. Mm-hmm. And I always had a hard time identifying it for me personally, but I know that Melanie Reinhardt, and I love her book, Chiron and the Healing Journey, has said that Chiron and Aries, because it's about our identity and our will, and there can be this overcompensation of not showing your vulnerability, or sometimes maybe even not being so in touch with it because of this real need to cover it up and to hide that which is precious from you, because you don't want to expose it. You don't want it to be exposed to either ridicule or being taken away. And that kind of speaks to me as well, because it's our very identity. And I mean, for many years, my husband and I ran an art gallery, and that was our very identity, until it wasn't anymore. And then I said, wait, this doesn't feel right. So I can't do this because I'm not being who I'm meant to be. Yeah. I wish I could just go to a job and make some money and that be it. But for me, everything has to feed into who am I, and who I'm creating myself to be. And I do feel like like you said, we're seeing people asserting their independence, maybe even if they feel like they have to disappoint people or they don't even know where they're going.
Yeah, well, I think
instinct to do so.
I know Adam Gainsbourg also has an amazing Chiron book called The Wisdom of a Deeply Open Heart. And he, when you were talking about that idea of the part that we either overcompensate for or that we avoid, and he talks about, we do that because we truly think that that part is broken or can't be fixed. Mm-hmm. So there's an element of helplessness when it comes to Chiron, and so other things in life, like we may take them on as a challenge because we think we can work through them. There's something about the Chiron, the whole Chiron signature, that makes us feel like that's not possible. Mm-hmm. And so that's something when I'm working with people or myself, I remind myself that was an old belief. It's actually, it's not what's happening today. And when you were talking about identity, it made me think about, Adam also talks about Aries being streaming consciousness, meaning your identity is not going to be defined. Your identity is always defining. So to embrace Chiron and Aries, it is to know myself and identify with myself moment to moment to moment, which takes a lot of courage because it's choosing the unknown all the time. And one reason why we particularly talk about Chiron and Aries as the maverick, maybe even more than just Chiron as an archetype, is because it is pioneering a new trail. Mm-hmm. But what's the new trail? The new trail is me being me, I think. And Aries is also, we know that Aries is ruled by Mars, has a lot to do with anger and frustration. I think a lot of the anger we're experiencing in the world right now is because a lot of us have suppressed who we really are. Yeah. So now this Chiron and Aries is a chance to step back into our, like you were saying, instinctual self. But that, you think about like years, right? Years and years, generations and generations of being told, here's how, here's what you should, here's what it looks like. And even if someone didn't say that, we learn by behavior that, when I act this way or am this way, mom gives me extra this, or, my partner responds this way. So we learn to do a much more adaptive thing. Aries is more that I just am me. And it requires being willing, I think, sometimes to face some conflict. Like there's just no way around that.
Yes. And I remember from the book that you were talking about, Adam Gainsbourg's book, he talks about the medicine walk being in the opposite sign, which for Aries is Libra. And so the more I assert who I am, then yes, I can maybe upset other people's view of who I am relative to them, relative to our relationship. So it could be upending some relationships, disappointing some people, not adapting well to the relationship, but your priority is adapting the self.
And they would need that change just as much as you do. I think that's an important thing to remember, that sometimes that liberation or that, hey, I'm going to choose to go in this direction on my own. And that doesn't mean at the exclusion of other people, but to be able to really step into yourself and say, I need to do this for me. That's Aries, right? But on some level, we all want permission to do that. And by you doing that, what you just described, there's a lot of the rest of us who, we take a lot of strength from that. At least I do. I mean, that's inspiring to me. When you live your life the way you live your life, it inspires me to say, hey, I can do that. There's room for me to do that.
One thing that really inspired me that a client of mine recently said is she had for years had a very strained relationship with her daughter, that nothing she said or did, seemed to bridge that gulf between them. The daughter had so much resentment or whatever it was, and she was always in so much pain and even like yearning for a connection with her daughter. And then when Chiron entered Aries, she swears it happened that day, she just dropped it. She just let it go. It just did not, it wasn't clutching at her heart anymore. It was just done. And wow. And I've also sensed just some kind of release there because, as we think of Aries as archetypally like birth, there is a birth there. And sometimes it can be just as easy as there's this method that a friend of mine swears by for forgiveness that's called the Sedona method. And they basically have you envision or even hold like a pen. Like if you're holding a pen in your hand and that's similar to some kind of pain or resentment you're holding on to, and you just release it, you just let it go. And they say in a similar way, you can release resentment, pain, all those other types of emotions in a way very simple to that. Like just in this very moment, can I just release it? Yeah. Just for now, just release it. And that's the kind of thing that I'm seeing as a potential as well.
And if we look at Aries, so I absolutely agree with that a new beginning. Aries as an archetype is always the start of a new evolutionary cycle. So in that respect, the big question is, what are we starting for the next 50 years? Because that really is, a big part of what's happening. But I was thinking about this idea of shifting and moving energy. To me, Aries also rules just raw energy. And think about little children, especially Aryan children, they move and they twitch, right? I mean, their bodies are seeming like unpredictable because they let that spontaneous movement happen. Mm-hmm. I think if we did that more, we don't like to because we think it looks weird, right? Or it might embarrass us or whatnot. But if we did that more, I think the channels would be open. Mm-hmm. And I think in a lot of ways, our channels personally and collectively, they're just stuck.
Yes, because we're afraid to stumble. Mm-hmm. And, I'd always believed, I had a business coach early on who, she had created like a multi-million-dollar business and everything like that. And then she became like a women's coach. And she always said, her name was Erica Learmark. And she was initially a stripper, and she has a book called, what was her book called? Things Like a Stripper, in business or whatever. And then she went and founded a multi-million-dollar, I think it was real estate firm. But her love was coaching women. And she had always said that baby steps are perfectly fine, and that in many ways is how women like to work, is in baby steps, just knowing that you can take some baby steps today. You don't have to always be taking these huge strides. And so I've always incorporated that, is the honoring baby steps. But, now I'm starting to see, as you had just described, baby steps aren't just small steps. They are also like, I may not even have my balance. I don't even know how to work this body that I just incarnated,
Yep.
It's like the stumbling and the, the maybe not even be able to move forward because you can't even stand up straight. So I do feel there's a little bit of that, but then there is that instinct and urge that I must move forward. Mm-hmm. And ultimately I must do so alone.
Yeah. I think I was reading somewhere that there with Chiron and Aries, sometimes there can be prior wounds or prior memories of the body or physical body having failed us in some way. Some way we weren't strong enough, we weren't healthy enough, it wasn't like physically capable enough. And so when we think about this stumbling around thing, we're talking about it's good to have compassion with ourselves, that if we have those fears, sometimes it takes a rebuilding of trust, literally with how our physical body moves and works, like even physiologically.
Yeah.
And if we've over spiritualized, which so many of us have done, I mean spiritualized in the sense of moving out of the body, because to me, spiritual is all states. It's a choice whether you want to do it, in or out. But Aries is the physical body. The Aries way, if we think about Chiron being the bridge between spiritual intelligence or information and bringing that into a usable way in the human realm, Aries is in the body. It's not going out somewhere. It's staying right here.
It's so interesting. I remember last year, just before, when I was flying to Costa Rica, because we were doing the Astrology Rising conference in Costa Rica. I was super excited, but I was really nervous because I think it was Mars was transiting Aries and it was going to transit my natal Chiron in Aries like the day that I was about to fly. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to be like, I'm going to try to be okay. Try not to have a meltdown like with the ticket agent and then get like kicked out of the flight, But what ended up happening was the night before I ended up meeting up with a bunch of friends, and we were all celebrating, and we drank like a whole bottle of tequila. And the next morning I had a headache that I swear to God, never in my life. I had like my brain wasn't even like fitting in my head. I mean, I had the most spring pain ever. And I was like, oh my God, I should have known that could be, even though, I mean, I have Chiron in my third house, but it just, to me, that was like, that health and healing sort of aspect of Chiron, I should have been taking good care of myself.
Yeah.
Put myself in that situation. So also my husband had some issue. I think when Chiron moved to Aries, he ended up like falling and getting thank God it was just slight concussion. He also has Chiron in Aries. I forget what was transiting it. I think we need to take care of our heads.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I'm in just recently I finished the last final hit of my Uranus opposition, which felt like it lasted 10 years, but I think it really was only 2.5 or something. But at the very end of it, being in my Chiron is in Aries in the first house, and it's in opposition to Uranus, but the moon was opposing Uranus that day, and so all that stuff was happening, and I had this terrible car accident, and I had staples in my head. So it's the same thing, and I was like, wow, like I've lived with Chiron and Aries for a long time, and I'm not particularly graceful physically, but I'm very active, and I'm physically strong, and I haven't had big repeated head things. But I tell you, this time it took me down. And it was right in the head. So there's 3 of us who can speak to the
wow, that's amazing.
The physical nature of it. And I think sometimes I don't think it's so much something outside doing something to us. I think a part of us that needs attention. And so, whatever the energy structure that's there, we will do whatever it takes to get our own attention. And so sometimes that's a direct blow to the head, I guess.
Yeah. Oh my God, I'm so sorry to hear that. How long ago was that?
That was in November. So.
Oh my gosh. And how are you healing now?
Yeah, I'm fine now. I mean, I had to take some time off work, and head injuries are strange.
Yeah.
But I figure I have a South Node in Gemini, ruled by Mercury conjunct Saturn. I figure some shaking up is probably not bad for that.
Well, the other thing that happened recently for me was I had been having these skin issues, which in the past, a couple of years ago when it first happened, I went to a homeopathy or homeopathic practitioner, whatever you call it.
Yeah.
Get homeopathy. And she gave me this really intense remedy that actually makes you, and she warned me, she said, this makes you hot-headed. I'm like, whoa. As if I need any more of that, because I can already be that. But she said, but once you have the crisis, then you're healed and the healing really takes place. I'm like, oh Lord. So I tried using the remedy again. I used a much lighter dosage this time. And I forgot I was using it, because I was just taking a little bit every day. And then the crisis happened. And then I was just totally out of my head, totally hot-headed. But I actually posted about it online. It was so nice. I had so many friends and people on Facebook saying, it's okay. And, but that was the healing crisis. Yeah. And I think that's what, Chiron and Pisces, I think a lot of people had these healing crises then too, because Pisces and Virgo, that axis deals a lot with what we traditionally think of as healing. But, Chiron in general, it being, as you said, the medicine is in the wound. That homeopathic remedy I was taking was for repressed rage. So, and so many people said, "Oh, I want to take some of that. What is it?" I'm like, "Are you serious?
My gosh,
you want to go and have like a meltdown on the bus driver or whatever? Okay, fine. You might feel better, but you might do some damage, to other people. But it's that's that maybe that Aryan fire that." If it's repressed or suppressed, it's going to come out in unhealthy ways.
Well, and oftentimes we see that a lot with Mars with eruptions in the skin. I mean, that is just so common. I have a lot of that, my own issues, but especially like inflamed things, red bumps, boils, acne, all kinds of things, because that is a big part of, right? If things aren't moving out, they're going to come some way. And I think that Aries Mars, oftentimes it comes right through the skin. So we can see it on people. It's almost like, we'll even say like, wow. If you have a big zit on your face, it's angry. We'll call it that, right? I have an angry boil on my foot.
Oh yeah. My skin issues is my neck and my face.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. But we're just, our chart is just a chart. We're the one living, like we're the best example, really, more than the chart.
Yeah. And I did want to mention, if anyone was curious, before we move on from the Chiron and Aries, is I did a webinar for the EA Zoom group on Alexander McQueen's chart. It was called the Wounded Maverick, because he had natally Chiron in Aries conjunct the North Node. I believe his sun was at like 29 Pisces, but the Chiron and Aries and the North Node were conjunct at 0 degrees or 0 or 1 degrees or something like that, early Aries. And he was actually born at about the time that, I don't remember if it was the exact month or whatever, if it was close by. Martin Luther King Jr. was shot and killed the last time Chiron had ingressed Aries, because the North Node was there at the time too. So that, just think about that collective wounding, that wounding to the sense of progress at the time. I also do feel though that, as tragic as it is, it ended up being like, rather than we put all our faith into someone, no matter how charismatic, to lead us and inspire us, when that light goes out, we really have the responsibility to find the light within us, each one of us, and maybe, we won't have another Martin Luther King Jr. ever, but we each have our own light, and we're all made of the same stuff. And I'm seeing this, as these gurus and spiritual leaders, are taken down, come tumbling down, then it leaves space for other people to rise up, not necessarily take their place, but take more responsibility for their lives and what it means to, be the change in the world.
Yeah. Christina, a client just asked me, she had in a session, she said, what do you think it means for those of us who have Chiron in Aries now that Chiron is in Aries? And I said, well, a lot of things, but I think one thing it is it's a call to us to practice our medicine. I said, because who better knows how to do that than those of us who live with it? Like, I think it, and that the great thing about Chiron and Aries is it's not fancy medicine. It's me being me and you being you, like in a courageous way. So that's the part I really feel that's something we can bring. We really can bring that to this transit if we are, brave enough to do so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do we have time to talk about May?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So in this stew of the Chiron, the vulnerability, but the instinct to, that there's no going back. I feel like there feels like there was a shift, that there's this phase in our life. There's no going back. There's part of us that needs to go it alone. And so as we get into May, a lot of astrologers are saying, oh, there's nothing happening until May 15th or whatever. There's always stuff happening. I'm seeing a lot of fallout from this incredible Scorpio full moon that we just had on the, 29th. And, for some people that was really life shifting. And, I wrote about it. And, I try not to freak people out, but I do want to emphasize when there are moments that could be potentially really significant. Obviously, we each have our own natal chart, and the magic and beauty of astrology is how the astrology is aspecting our own natal charts. So, you need to get an astrology reading from an astrologer like Tara or myself in order to really know how your particular life is being affected by these transits. That was a Scorpio full moon. What was really significant about not only is just Scorpio, obviously Scorpio is drama and intensity and metamorphosis, but it was square the lunar nodes. And I mean, I'm literally, to me, the nodes just are so incredibly impactful, and they can be. And, it was a square in a grand cross in fixed signs, right? So, the North Node is in Leo, the South Node is in Aquarius.
Yeah.
And that being squared by the full moon. I mean, a lot of times astrologers will call that, what do we say? It's like being nailed at the cross, or like someone gets crucified on the cross kind of thing. And I have seen that type of thing happen, and it can be really shocking. It can be sad too, but usually something has been going on that has not been addressed, and it comes to a light. Full moons bring things to light.
Yeah.
And then, with the nodes involved like that at a tight square, there's a choice. There is some kind of fated shift of a path, and we always can choose the path. But, when it comes to, if we're crucified, do we take responsibility for how we got there? Or do we just try to cling to, our righteousness? Okay. What have you seen since that full moon?
Yeah, I mean, I think a similar feel to me. For me personally, I actually haven't slept well since the full moon. So, so that's my physical response. And it's funny, I don't know if I would say that I am nailed to a cross, but I have felt stuck. And I hadn't thought about that fixed cross. So thanks for bringing that to my attention. And it makes sense. That's how it feels to me. It's a stuck. And I think for me, sometimes when I feel stuck or people around me feel stuck, it's important to not try to get out of that stuck too fast, right? Because there's something there. There's a reason why you feel stuck. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because any square to the nodes, in evolutionary astrology, they call it a skip step, which I don't really like that terminology because it doesn't make sense to me, but it basically means that there's something that hasn't been integrated that needs integration. Usually the square, acts like some kind of a challenge, or maybe even a distraction, or something like taking you off the path of development, when it's really something that needs to be recognized and resolved and integrated in a way that can help to fuel, where you're going on that path.
It sometimes can feel like, I always like to think about a quote unquote skip step as like a missing piece to your puzzle, that once you drop it in, things flow. So when I have a skip step in my chart, and I use that a lot in my counseling, I feel like, once you start to move in the direction of working with all the functions that planet represents, that you find flow. And so we can think about, in this case, with the full moon, and what happens when we don't have flow? We feel stuck, which is exactly what I think, Christina, you're describing, and even what I'm describing.
Mm-hmm. And, the sun is in Taurus now, and that can, I think one of the key words for that is stuckness. I mean, there's steadiness, there's wanting to, I know what Mark Jones calls it survival anxiety at times, when it's the shadow side of it, because if Aries is birth and then Taurus is, okay, I want to keep what I have. I got to survive. Yeah. What does it take for me to survive? Yeah. The beauty of Taurus is it can help us find steadiness and safety and, connection to the earth and our roots and things like that. But with its opposition, Scorpio is actually taking us into areas that, are risky maybe, or
out of control. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Out of control. Those are my nodes, by the way. South Node in Taurus and North Node in Scorpio.
Oh, how exciting.
So I know, right? So I know that axis really well. So I feel like these first couple weeks, or at least now, there's, that dramatic full moon for some people, I mean, I'm knock on wood, nothing too dramatic happened in my life, but I've seen and witnessed and heard and, been around other people having incredibly intense experiences that take time, that they're going to take time to integrate and to, I think people are reeling from some of those shifts that happen because, a square from the nodes that's like almost like the energy of an eclipse.
Yeah.
And so I feel like, these next couple of weeks, we want to, maybe enjoy a little bit of the safety and steadiness of Taurus, but not get too comfortable, right? Because things are going to shift here about mid-month.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So around the 13th, I think we were saying, was when Mars, at the end of Capricorn, begins to square Uranus and Aries at the very end of Aries, 29th degree.
Mm-hmm.
And then, let's see, that gets tighter. Yeah, the 14th is when it's exact. Mm-hmm. And then the new moon is on the 15th, the new moon in Taurus.
Which is interesting because on that same day, Uranus moves into Taurus. So we have a really, think about that's two beginnings in Taurus.
And I just noticed, that new moon is 24 Taurus, but isn't Algol like 26 Taurus? And the Algol star, it's like the Medusa stars where people really like lose their head. Like,
fantastic.
Oh my God.
Well, the Sabian symbol for that new moon is going to be a vast public park, which is all about cultivating natural resources for people to share, which I thought was fascinating, that on the same day that Uranus moves into Taurus, I think there's going to be this shift into how we're using our resources. But that doesn't always feel good to us because Taurus holds tight to what's mine.
Mm-hmm. And it's still within a square of Mars. And then the next day, the 16th, Mars moves into Aquarius, which is, the collective, and it actually is answering to Uranus. So it's funny because Uranus in Aries was answering to Mars, right? And then when they shift, Mars will be answering to Uranus.
That's fascinating.
And so, I really think we see collective movements when it comes to Uranus and Aquarius. And so Uranus has been in Aries how long now?
Oh, almost. I think they're about 8 years in the sign, right? So
yeah. Okay.
So 84 to go now.
And so, so we'll have about another 8 years, so this is a major shift, long-term shift. And as we've seen Uranus in these late degrees of Aries, this last year or two, how many people thought they would ever make a sign and go out to take to the streets and protest? I never thought that's something that I would do. And I think I've done it like 3 times the past couple of years.
Wow.
Or no, since, yeah.
Hey, well, but I don't know. Just Chiron and Aries itself is protest time.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like, so from Uranus shifting from Aries to Taurus, Taurus like resists things. Someone had called it the ultimate procrastinator, because Taurus is like the bull, right? But when a bull gets moving, it's going to go all the way. And so Uranus is going to be in this, whatever area of your chart Taurus is an area that probably resists change, but the change is inevitable with Uranus.
Yeah. And that's not the only thing happening. That's why I'm going back to Chiron and Aries. I'm like, and at the same time that's happening, right? It's like, here's where I'm stuck. And at the same time, there's this huge impetus to free myself from what I was stuck from.
Yeah. So that could be, in some ways it could be very helpful because it's like, I must do what I must do.
Well, because it takes a lot to get Taurus to move. I know Laura Nalbandian always talks about Taurus. It grew, like the route it takes through life, it wears a groove into the ground so deep that it doesn't even take any other passageway.
Wow. It's so funny. My husband has Mars in Taurus, and so he's got a brother and a sister, and they were all, the brother, let me see. I forget what they called each other. They started with a P. Perfect. The brother and the sister both thought they were perfect. I forget what the other P was. But anyway, my husband, Brian, he was called Pokey. The slow poke. He's just slow. He's methodical. He wants to do it right, but he is just a slow mover. But but he's going to have Uranus going over his Mars, and I just pray to God.
Wow.
And I told him, I said, about that whole pokey business. Oh, his best friend from college used to call him Speedy B. Just a total joke.
Oh my gosh.
Hey, Speedy B, are you kind of like, that is how he's just slow. He kind of talks slow. He kind of moves slow. And when I told him, I said, you're going to need to just be moving up on your toes, get on your toes and be, and he says he's cool with that, but we'll see how that works for him.
But what we do know is that maybe Taurus, more than any sign, when it does find value and meaning in something and it wants something, I mean, you're right about the bull. You are not going to be able to stop it.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's what we need at this point. Like, we need those combinations of energy. It's like we think about them on their own, right? Taurus does this, Uranus does this, Chiron does this, Aries does this. But think about it in a more alchemical way. Maybe that's the perfect potion, if you will.
Yeah, and by you saying alchemical potion, I just was looking at the Jupiter in Scorpio trining Neptune in Pisces. Jupiter's retrograde this time. So this is. Let me see. I know it happened in December was last time it was exact. And I don't remember if this is the second or the third time they're trining each other. But the trine, to me, that's just, that flow of that water energy and that magic and that allowing that dark medicine to be healing.
Yeah, and lets it happen. So what does all that water helps? I mean, things that are stuck have a renewed movement. And I think I look at those types of aspects as that's help, that's all of our helpers. If we use it, right? Because we all know to trine, we can be lazy with the trine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we could, like you said, we could just go shooting up under the bridge or something.
Yeah. Or just, drink bottles of wine every night after work and,
Right. And just let the opportunity pass us by, which I don't think we're going to want to do with, I just really am feeling this impulse with the Chiron and Aries.
Yeah.
Kind of saying, I've spent enough time dreaming and yearning and leaning on others. This is like a chance at a second chance.
Oh, Aries is the most potent, vibrant spark of life. If there was any sign that's about just pure being alive, it's Aries. So part of it is a challenge to live. So you're right. I don't think shooting up under the bridge or drinking our lives away, and this is not a judgment on those things at all. It's just that Chiron and Aries says, wake up. It is, in a sense, it is really be alive. And a lot of us, including me at times, we live like we're not.
Yeah. And so let's see, we've got we mentioned the new moon being on the 15th, which was, new moon in Taurus, 24 degrees, which is just when, and then just hours later is Uranus enters Taurus and is being squared by, and Uranus then conjuncts Mercury. I don't know if it's exact. It doesn't look like it's exact, but they're pretty close there in early Taurus. And then the full moon, we'll just kind of skip to the full moon, which will be, what did you say? That is
29th or 30th.
Oh yeah, that's right. The 29th. It's a Sag full moon. We'll be in Chicago for you.
All right. Yeah.
UAC conference. So Sag full moon should be a party time, hopefully. Hopefully the drama doesn't catch us up, trip us all up. Sure. And you're going to be speaking too.
I am. I'm choosing planets on the 1st, which is this like, it's never as popular. Like my EA Zoom meetings and things on Chiron, I have.
Oh yes, I did want to just mention that for anyone listening, go to the EA Zoom meetings either in Facebook or they have a YouTube channel, and look Tara Aal, her Chiron and Aries talk. I thought that was really brilliant.
Well, and you, Christine, I mean, you mentioned yours, but I listened to yours, and it also is fantastic. So yeah, if you're like feeling into the Chiron thing, there's good stuff on there for free. But planets on the 1st is just a technique about really like choosing one planet in your chart as an archetype and then living that first as a filter. And so for me, it's a more experiential way to play with astrology. So if you're curious about that too, you can find that on my website too.
Oh, it's on your website?
Yeah, on my website, I have a section under astrology, all on planets first. And I talk about my experience of choosing different planets first. And I have some free tools on there. So it's
ooh, I need to check that out because I have Mercury in the 1st.
And I lived that last year. I have a whole write-up on it.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, I know the one thing is I say I a lot.
Yeah.
When I read about Mercury in the 1st, I view life through my experience. I mean, I assume everybody does, but I guess, maybe someone with Mercury in the 11th or 7th
would be different.
Might be a little different.
Well, yeah, because Mercury in the 1st is my story, right? Mercury in the 11th might be everybody's collective story. I mean, it's different. But what do you think about the full moon on the 29th? I mean, let's talk about that for a second before and then we're going to run out of time. But this Sagittarius full moon, I always feel like whenever there's Sag, there's so much potential to see a greater perspective, to see, the bigger concept, the bigger picture. And
So it's 8 degrees, right? I'm not seeing now what I'm looking at. I don't have the asteroids here, so I'm not sure if there's any asteroids exactly aspecting it. But I like it especially because we're going to be at this conference where even though it's astrology, there's going to be like 1,500 astrologers and astrology lovers there. And there's so many different techniques and belief systems, even within astrology. I mean, there's a lot of disagreements that go on with like, not just techniques, but why we're using astrology and how we're using astrology. I hope we can access the higher side of the jovialness of Sagittarius and Jupiter.
Yeah.
The shadow is the righteousness, of Sagittarius, but ultimately it's about truth and belief. There'll still be that Jupiter trine Neptune of the magic potential. There's also just collectively, we've seen Jupiter in Scorpio be a lot about this Me Too movement is when that sort of happened, as Jupiter ingressed Scorpio. And there may be an overflowing of that kind of energy again. Maybe some, there's more that needs to be released from, the genie in the bottle or
yeah.
But maybe there can be a sense of this renewed vision or long-term vision can be a really good aspect with sort of dimension of a full moon in Sagittarius. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think that Jupiter retrograde to me is always this period where we need to redefine what our truth is. What do I really believe in, and am I living my life in a way that aligns with that? And of course, Jupiter also is confidence and beliefs, but to me, it's the truth that kind of comes to that. Especially with it being in Scorpio, which is going deeper, because Scorpio also as an archetype wants to get beneath the surface and discover the truth. And so I think with that happening at the same time, with that being, the ruler of that full moon, I think those of us who have been paying attention and wanting that part in ourselves, there could be a real opportunity to see something, truly be illuminated. And because there are not a lot of aspects going on that day, it kind of frees the moon, Like, I think it gives us the spaciousness. So I always say, though, with the full moon, you talked about it earlier, I mean, it is the light of awareness. whether or not we want to see and whether or not we're willing to see in the mirror, because oppositions are mirror. I mean, it's a mirror. We're meant to see something in reflection, but oftentimes we see it as happening, across from us or happening to us or happening, and so I think if we're willing to, I guess, look in the mirror and really see more, I think there could be a lot to be seen. That same day, by the way, later that evening, Mercury is going to move into Gemini. And so that even gives us another opening. Like Mercury and Gemini can see all different sides of things. I think that day could be amazing for truth, personal truth specifically,
Yeah. And, there's that Gemini Sagittarius axis is, knowledge balanced with wisdom.
Yeah.
And, with just pure belief, but nothing for the mind, to grab onto, you're not getting the full experience of truth, and vice versa too, with just a bunch of data.
Right.
But no real belief and faith, it doesn't really mean much. So hopefully we'll be able to, as you said, be willing to see that which is revealed.
Yeah.
As truth and lies, and discern, have some discernment there, especially with Mercury going to sign it rules in Gemini.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, my dear. Well, I know that you you have work to do. You got up at 7 a.m. before your work day, so I really, really appreciate that.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for reaching out and including me. It's been awesome.
Okay, great. And you can find Tara online at Tara Aal. That's TaraAal.com. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, great. Do you have any other offer that you want to just mention before you head off?
I had been offering a special Chiron focused sessions for an hour for $100, and I would be just delighted to continue that.
Yes.
Yeah, be delighted to continue that. Oh, I'm going to be away for a bit, so let's just continue it through the month of June.
Ooh, that's great. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that is an awesome offer, especially because you're one of the Chiron Mavericks.
Yeah.
So make sure you take advantage of that. And thank you all for listening. Have an amazing May, and be willing to go with that instinct. Don't be afraid to stumble and fall, and don't be afraid to fly.
Beautiful. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.